World War III astrology, Trump versus Harris, who will lead the US into chaos? I'm Dr. V, and in this video, we're going to apply the most sophisticated tools of esoteric science, astrological calculations, mundane astrology, spiritual intuition, in order to cast light on the pivotal election that's coming up, as well as the following years and the aftermath for the US and the world. Right, folks, it's time for a US politics video, but this video is much more than that. We're going to unlock and decode the forces that are at play currently in the US elections and how they're going to impact the wider world in the coming years. In this video, you're going to get the following. First, we're going to look at the occurrences, the events that await the US in the coming years. We need to understand those. We need to know where the US is going to be in the coming years so we understand what's at stake in the current elections. Two, we're going to look at the individual candidates, Trump and Harris, and their parties. And I'm going to give you proof that you have never seen before for which one of these candidates will win the election. It's going to be very clear, so make sure you watch this video till the end. And three, we're going to then put the puzzle pieces together, and we will understand better and we will understand what's at stake for the new president, what the new president will have to deal with, the world that they will have to maneuver and how they will have to do that, and what's at stake for the ongoing confrontation that we're seeing unfold in the world. That's what we're doing at the end. So let's start with number one. First, we talk about World War III as the unfolding and evolving conflict that's going on right now. And that has, a lot of dimensions and factors to it. There is a astrological signature which clearly marks the troubles that we're going into in many ways. And that astrological signature, I've talked about this before. I've done actually lots of videos on this specifically where we look into this deeper. But that astrological signature, it's the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune that we're going to have in the first degrees of Aries. You see this here on the screen right now. So this constellation, it's going to be in the sky for several years. It first constellates in 2026 in a clean way. In 2025, it already starts to go in a little bit, but then in 26, it constellates in a clean way. And then 26 to 27, 28, it's in play and it's in effect. And that stands for the eruption of conflicts around borders. It stands for new holy wars. It stands for fanaticism, religious and ideological worldview-based fanaticism that leads to confrontations. It also stands for great confusion on the highest level about states and their apparatuses of power. So all of these things, obviously, that doesn't bode well for the prospects for peace, especially when you look at the world that we're in right now. This hasn't even happened yet. This hasn't even happened yet, and we're already on the brink of all-out war. And then we have 3 years of that, and it's on the first degree of Aries. So that's a very important degree in astrology because it's the birthday of the year in some ways. There's some techniques that allow you to predict what's going to happen for the whole year. But I'm not going to go too much into this, actually, as I said before, because I want to talk about the US in this video. So we want to see what happens in this time period, in these 3 years that I just kind of, very in broad strokes painted for you. What's going to happen in the US? Because that allows us to understand what's at stake in the current elections, right? So let's get into the chart. The progressions are really important because they show you what's going to happen in a kind of fated way, right? So progressions in astrology, the progressions are the kind of hidden rhythm of destiny that you cannot escape, right? The transits are energies that come at you, and you can deal with them in different ways depending on how advanced you are spiritually, right? You can manage the transits differently, but the progressions are kind of, you can't escape that. It's hardwired into what's going to happen to you. So the progressions are really important. When we look at the progressions for the United States chart, we've got here let me just go back to where we are now. So we're here in September, October, November, October 24, right? Just before the elections. And then in the coming months and years, as we go into 25, you're going to have a very important constellation here where the progressing sun is going to oppose Neptune. You see this here, the natal Neptune. So you're going to have a couple of years, and it's not just 1 year, this is several years, right? You're going to have several years of chaos and confusion, and also of light being shown, light being cast on the Neptunian side. Okay, what's the Neptunian side? We have to understand the US chart a little bit better for this. So the US chart, right? The US natal chart, you've got a couple of different tendencies and forces here, right? You've got, on the one hand, you've got the freedom-loving people, okay? Freedom-loving, the pioneers, the soul of the freedom lover, right? This is a moon in Aquarius, right? Typical for that signature. And you've got the patriots, right? The sun in Cancer, a very patriotic people who are very oriented towards the collective, community, the communitarian kind of aspect of it, of being part of this community, right? So the patriots and also connected to the land and the roots and the family, even though there's all of that kind of difficulty around the roots, right? So there's this Saturn square that comes here into the sun, all of these karmic challenges around the roots. Who are we? Who's part of this? Who's not part of this? And so on. But, in essence, you've got the patriotic people who are freedom loving, right? And that's the essence. But then you have this other constellation here, which is Neptune on the MC, right? And this is square Mars. And what is this? This is the deception and the confusion being sown globally, right? This is on the MC is what happens globally, what you project globally, right? What you project into the outside world. And that's chaos and lies and confusion. And why? What for? For the interests of elites, right? So elites, you have power elites here, very powerful elites, the cabal, the elites, right? And these elites, they are basically waging war. The Neptune is here in a square to Mars, right? Is in a square to Mars. They're waging war again and again in order to sow confusion, deception, lies, and expand their power, right? That's kind of the globalists, the oligarchs, the elites who run things, in all of their lobbies and various kind of institutes and think tanks and so on and so forth. And that tendency, these two tendencies, they're kind of conflicting with each other, right? They're conflicting. They're going to conflict. That's the story of the US in many ways. And in the coming years, this tension is going to escalate in a way because, as I showed you here, you're going to have the confrontation of the people as well as the leader with those elites. So this is what's shown in the chart when we talk about a progress sun against Neptune, right? Remember, that's that Neptune, right? That stands for deceptions and so on. And the sun is opposing it, right? The sun is kind of shining a light on that Neptune, right? On those nefarious activities, right? So could also be basically the lies and deceptions of the mainstream, right? That are being illuminated, that are coming to light, that are coming to fore, right? That are coming to consciousness in this time, whether that's in healthcare or in various other lobbies and various other establishment institutions and so on. And then at the same time, right? Throughout this same time, you have the Mars. Mars obviously stands for what? Stands for war and confrontation. The Mars is going into these harsh aspects. First into a square with Jupiter, you see here, Mars square Jupiter, and then conjunction with Saturn, okay? So what is this? This, I can just give you a quick rundown so you understand what this stands for in the US chart, because it's very telling. We can go all the way back, right? All the way back from when this story started, basically. And that's when Mars enters into Libra is in 41, right? Changing the sign is when the US enters into the Second World War, right? And then that's a change of sign is very important in progressions. And then it goes forward, right? Goes forward. And then you have the first square from that progress Mars coming into here, into Jupiter. You can see this here. This is the Korea War, right? This is the Korea War. And right after starts the Vietnam War, right? This is basically the same constellation, right? The same constellation. And then goes on and on, right? Goes on. And then you have a square of that Mars with the sun in the chart. And for the first time, it goes and crashes on Saturn, right? Mars-Saturn is basically a blockage of your martial ambitions, right? And this is exactly when the US is declared the loser, right? Defeat is declared with Vietnam, right? 75, okay? And this, so you can see already the progress Mars here is super telling, right? It comes out here and then you have a first square with progress Mars to progress Jupiter, which is being basically expansive, right? And expansionist and excessive in military activities. And that's the Gulf War, 1990, right? And 1990, the first Gulf War, right? And then it continues. It just goes on and on. Like there is markers basically going on for it turns retrograde. So this Mars turns retrograde right after the second Iraq war, right? The second Iraq invasion, basically. And then it turns back, it goes back here. You see this here in the years 24, 25, especially here in the years 26, 27, it goes back into the square with Jupiter and also the conjunction with Saturn, right? So this is basically showing me that in the years 26, 27, 28, especially, right? 28, then going into 29, this is 3 or 4 years in which there is going to be an expansive or excessive military adventurism, right? That's the signature, which stands for this. It's very archetypically close and it resonates very much archetypically, as well as some blockages, obstructions, hindrances, defeats of some sorts, right? Or at least some great difficulties on the military front in those same years, right? So we have basically the markers of what? Of great confusion and opposition between large parts of the populace against certain deceptive practices, right, of leading elites of the nation. And second, we have very clear indications of belligerent activities of being pulled into wars or starting wars or being pulled into wars, whatever the case may be. We can't really tell here, but definitely being in some warlike activities in the coming years. So now we already know that those years, the 26 to 28 kind of bracket, right, is very dangerous ground for humanity. We're looking at a very, very confrontational and difficult time. And now we have the additional understanding that the US is going to be at war in that time. Okay, the US is going to be at war in that time. So hold on to this thought. Hold on to this thought. This is important for the logical presentation that I'm doing here. This is important for the argument and for the deduction basically that I'm presenting here for you, right? The proof that I'm going to be presenting for you. It's important for this, so keep this in mind. But now next, before we come back to this and before we answer who's going to be the person who's leading the US and who will it be against and with, right? What for? What will this war be for? What will this belligerent activities be for? Before we get there, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It's important for the algorithm. Tack, 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 tack. Let's go. All right, so let's start with Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris didn't have a good performance, a good time over the last couple of weeks. And obviously this was pretty clear. This was pretty glaring and obvious for anybody who looked at the chart. I predicted this, very clearly in the last video with Saturn on her Chiron opposite Pluto. This transit here is basically her weaknesses, her greatest vulnerabilities and weaknesses being exposed, completely exposed for everyone to see. And this is what happened in the performances, in the appearances that she had, where, those were super friendly and everybody was in on basically making her look good. And nonetheless, it didn't work out. And people are starting to realize that, okay, she can read from a teleprompter, but that's about it. And apart from that, okay, she's a nice person to hang out with, to have a beer with, but who cares, right? Is that what matters at the end of the day? It's not, right? Unless if you're really that dumb, if you have been dumbed down that much, and unfortunately a lot of people it applies to, and it's a sad state of affairs, but the spiritual energies that exist right now, that are in charge right now, the dark energies that are in charge right now, they have an interest in keeping people dumb, right? They have an interest in filling up your frequencies with bullshit stuff, really, that's irrelevant, right? Completely irrelevant. Pop star did this and whatever, and Taylor Swift said this and whatnot, right? And all kinds of irrelevant stuff. And you're bombarded with that stuff from the moment you wake up, from the moment you pick up your phone, and it clutters all of your channels basically. And then you're going to be susceptible. You're going to be susceptible for some very inane kind of arguments that control your election behavior at the end of the day, right? Okay, she's nice. She's good to have a beer with, right? Vote for her. Okay, but at the end of the day, what matters more and what's more interesting is not this personal stuff. I'm not going to look at the personal stuff. What I will look at and what I will share with you is what's going to happen to the Democratic Party. Because here I can show you some proof that will make you understand totally what's going to happen in this next election. Okay, so the Democratic Party, when you look at the progressions, right? The progressions for the Democratic Party, it's right now entering, basically right now, right? End of 24, it's entering into this phase where you have an opposition of Sun to Uranus, right? A perfect and exact opposition of Sun to Uranus in the progress chart, right? Progress Sun to progress Uranus. And this is going on now for some time, right? This is going to go on for some time. And it's basically the main marker of what's happening in 2025 to the Democratic Party. 2025, Sun, Uranus, exact opposition in the Democratic Party. What does that mean? Sun opposite Uranus means complete revolution, complete overhaul, complete self-renewal, right? Rebellion and renewal of the entity. So the chart shows you that in 2025, basically starting right after the election, the Democratic Party is going to completely renew itself and potentially even break up. Potentially, you have a Sun opposite Uranus. It means there is going to be rebellious forces that go against the essence of this entity, right? And this can lead to a breakup or a split, a reinvention, right? So what does that tell you? So the most likely scenario for this to happen, obviously, is that the Democratic Party is going to split up. Why? Because, frankly, because of Gaza, because of the position that the Democrats took in the Israel-Gaza conflict, which led the Democrats to go against a large part of their own base. Their own base is so upset with all of this, is so upset with how much the Democrats have become basically the mainstream party, the number one mainstream party, which just does exactly what all the donors say, what all the mass media wants them to do, right? It's the definition of the mainstream party right now. And there is a lot of people in the Democrat camp and in the liberal progressive kind of movement and camps that don't want to see this course continue, and that have reached a point where they're saying it's enough. We're gonna go our own way. We're gonna go our own way. So this is why Jill Stein is gonna do well in these elections. This is why people like Cornel West, he might not do well, obviously, but he is important as somebody who presents a different view. And there is a lot of people in the Democratic Party that you will see break away from the party, right? So this alone tells you what's going to happen, because Kamala Harris is the ultimate mainstream candidate. She's the ultimate establishment mainstream candidate, right? She's literally a teleprompter, right? She reads what the ruling people, what the main kind of decision makers in the party and in the party system tell her to say. That's what she says, right? What the Obamas and so on and so forth, what the think tanks tell her to say, that's what she says. So that alone tells you that Kamala Harris is not going to win this election, because it's impossible for the Democratic Party over the next 6 months to go through a complete renewal, potentially a breakup, a split, as I showed you with these upcoming transits, while the mainstream establishment party candidate has just won the elections and has just become president, right? That alone tells you that she's not going to win. Okay, but if you think that's not enough, I've got far more proof for you. Basically, okay, I called it. Donald Trump is going to win this election. Donald Trump is going to win this election, right? So I called it already. But there's far more proof, and you don't want to miss this. Make sure you watch this till the end, because that's going to blow your mind, what I show you. It's going to tie everything back into how we started this whole video with the analysis on the global stage that we started. So let's go into Donald Trump. Trump, well, obviously, he's got everybody's, and their mother has been telling you, everybody who's done a little bit of astrology has been telling you that he has a Jupiter transit over Sun right now. Okay, that's great, right? You're gonna get fame and acclaim, and he's the grifter that he is. He started to, sorry, I got to say this, but he's shilling a crypto coin, right? He's shilling some crypto coin for that is owned by his family, right? He's doing that on the side, like in one post on how to improve the world, how to help the hurricane victims, and the next post is on buy my new crypto coin. So I mean, it's really, you can't change the man, right? But then again, God has plans for people that oftentimes go far beyond their character, right? God oftentimes uses people who are, limited, people who are faulty, who have defects, moral defects, right? Nonetheless, God uses them for larger plans, much, much larger plans, for a big role that they have in the unfolding of the cosmic story, right? And they can play a role of great proportions, right? Where they can serve a great purpose. And that's the case with Donald Trump, who clearly he's a narcissist. He's a greedy guy. He can't leave out any opportunity to making himself bigger or making a buck or, upping his ego or whatnot. But nonetheless, he's playing, and he's going to play an important role. And he has, at the same time, he still has a strong will and a strong spiritual belief within him, right? And it's possible because people are multi-layered, right? Apart from people who reach a level of extremely high level of initiation and purification and almost sainthood, most people who are actually running the world and doing things in the world are gray and have multiple layers, right? They have multiple aspects to them. And he clearly also has a aspect where he's He's fighting, right, for a great cause as well, right? So let's look at what he's going to be fighting for, actually, right? On when he's going to be fighting, how he's going to be fighting. This is very, very telling. And this is really what wraps everything up, right? When you see this. Because Donald Trump, in the coming time, in the coming years, right? 25, going into 26, in 26, in the year 25, and then going into 26, his progressed MC, you see this here? Progressed MC is going to be on Pluto, right? While at the same time, progressed MC is on Pluto. Actually, I need to show you another chart for this. Okay, here we go. This is the chart. This is the chart because I've got the progressed asteroids in here as well, right? So this is the chart. In the year 26 of the Lord, Donald J. Trump, he's going to be, not just he's going to have what I just said, the progressed MC, right, on Pluto, but also here's his progress sun. His progress sun will be with Bellona. Progress Bellona. Bellona is the asteroid that stands for war, right? The goddess of war. By the way, shout out to Frank Felber, great astrologer, greatest seer on the planet, who pointed this out beforehand and who found this constellation. So the sun is with Bellona, the goddess of war. And at the same time, Mars here, as you can see here, progress Mars is on Jupiter. Okay, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? Let me just decode this for you and translate this back into English, from astrologies into English, right? So this is a very, very clear marker that an archetypal signature that's pre-written in the destiny of Donald Trump, that in the year 26, Donald Trump is going to be globally waging a war, right? So his MC is on Pluto, right? His sun is with Bellona, the goddess of war, right? And Dares is here too. Dares is the gladiator, right? The gladiator is also here with MC and Pluto. And his Mars with Jupiter. So it's not just he's just fighting some kind of big, whatever, he's fighting for his survival, whatever. He's fighting a war. This is war, right? Bellona is war. It's not just fighting against lawfare or whatever, right? So in which scenario is it possible that in the year 26, 27, Donald Trump is globally seen as fighting a war? Obviously, only if he wins the election. So he's going to win the election. He's winning the election, right? There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. From every angle that you look at it, he's winning the elections, the coming elections. Now, obviously, you're going to ask yourself, who is that war against? Who's that war against? Why war, and so on and so forth? Wasn't it the case that Kamala Harris and Biden and the Democrats, they are the ones who are pushing for war, for escalation of the war with Russia, right? Certainly seems like it, right? And Donald Trump, on the contrary, he's like, okay, let's step back. Ukraine can just do whatever, right? We don't need to go into that. We don't need that confrontation. That's true. But at the same time, in order to get to the place where Donald Trump is right now, right? You remember people wanted, he was close to, there was some question marks on whether he would actually make it to the finishing line in this election. And he turned things around. He got a big donor, a really big donor, which he didn't do before. And he made certain deals with some of the most powerful people, actually the most powerful lobby, right? In the United States. Who's that? It's the Israel lobby. He made some deals there, and he's now basically the candidate that is giving Israel everything Israel needs, right? Who's saying, like, everything you need, we back you. We're going to send weapons. We're going to send soldiers. He literally went recently in front of an audience and he was saying, Israel is too small. It should be bigger, right? It's not big enough. And, we should nuke Iran's nuclear, we should not nuke, obviously, but take out Iran's nuclear capacities and all of that. He's become much more so even than the Democrats, he's become the candidate he's become the force that is ready to take the US into war in the Middle East. So that's the angle you have there. And if you want to know what that means for the future confrontations that are coming, does that mean that China and Russia are going to stay out of this? Is it just going to be the US? And so on. No, obviously the image is much more complex, and things are going to have domino chain reactions, and people are going to be pulled into wars that they don't even want to be pulled into. And nations are going to be pulled into wars that they don't want to be pulled into. But we leave that for future videos where I'm going to unlock all of that and decode that, and we're going to analyze the ongoing developments on the global scale. Let's wrap this video up though by making some very, very clear, I'm going to give you some very, very clear predictions on what's going to happen in the US. So if we put the puzzle pieces together, we can tell that the Democratic Party after these elections is going to go through a major upheaval, overhaul, rebellions internally, and it's going to split. It's going to split. It's going to split. And even more so, even the Republican Party, because this is a whole other topics, we need more videos for this, but the Republican Party under Trump, when and if Trump makes those decisions to pull the United States into war in different theaters, specifically in the Middle East, the Republican Party will split too, because the America First folks, the America First people who are currently still with Trump, they're going to stop. They're going to stop protecting. They're going to stop backing Trump at that point, right? And Trump is going to get into a big dilemma. So, who is it going to be, neocons or America First? You can't have both. You can't have both, right? So the next couple of years in the United States, you are going to see major, major changes. For the first time in the history of the United States, the two-party system is going to be dissolved. And this obviously is exactly what we saw in the astrological markers as well. Now I'm going to leave it at this. There's so many other angles in this whole story to analyze and to look through, but we're going to need different videos for this. So we're going to look into the different perspectives of this unfolding story in the coming time. Let me know in the comments what you want to see more of, what your thoughts are on everything I just shared with you here. If you want to decode and understand your own risk navigation in these dangerous times, you can work with me directly as well. I'm open for consultations. You can find the links below and check out what we can do together. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet. Don't forget to like this video. Tack, 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 tack. It's important for the algorithm. And I'll see you at the next video. Be well, be blessed.